This is a Save or Die special report. Hi, this is DM Jim here with a Save or Die field report recorded live at Yukon Game Convention held in Ypsilanti, Michigan the weekend of November 20th through 21st, 2015. The following is the OSR discussion panel, Old School Cityscapes. The hosts were Gamers and Grognard's Ryan Thompson and Drink Spin Run podcaster Adam Miskevich. The panelists were guest of honor Bill Webb of Frog God Games, industry insider Jim Wampler from Goodman Games and this very podcast, OSR track sponsor John Reist, Tim Snyder of Goblinoid Games, and Bill Barsh of Pacesetter Games. Enjoy.
Welcome to the OSR seminar for Yukon 2015. Tonight we will be talking about cities and gaming is essentially the topic. Nothing is out of bounds. Talk about what we want. I'm Ryan Thompson, the OSR track coordinator for Yukon. It's my lovely co-host Adam Miskevich.
Howdy, folks.
Sorry, he's a married folk.
The cutest baby.
I'd like to introduce one of our panelists tonight is our guest of honor this year, Bill Webb of Frog God Games. Jim Wampler of Goodman Games and Save or Die podcast. Bill Barsh of local game company Pacesetter Games and Simulations. Tim Snyder of Savage Afterworld fame and co-author of Crypt World. And the man who's actually made possible the guest that we have here this year, John Reist of Open Gaming. Buy his stuff so he can keep doing this for us?
Yeah, please.
And so, I don't know who we want to start out with, but nothing is out of bounds. I guess we can talk about any experiences that we want to involving city and urban adventures through gaming history, favorite cities you've created, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. I mean, I got a lot of experience with cities, I guess, and I can definitely fill some time, man. So you know, back in the day when at least us two old farts started playing, pretty much everything was dungeon crawls, right? And so you know, you had outdoor and wilderness adventures, and that's what you went on. And the wilderness was really scary because you could get 300 orcs for a wandering monster encounter, or you could get 2d12 hill giants would be an average wandering monster in the wilderness. And so the concept of the city, exterior to the Blackmore supplement that was really early in the Judges Guild history, was really not thought of very much. Everybody knew there was this great city of Greyhawk, but nobody really had a city supplement. And so a regular adventure would be, okay, we go through the wilderness, we barely survive the wandering monsters in the wilderness because the wilderness is very scary. We get to the safety of the dungeon, we kill the monsters, we steal their socks, and then we haul ass through the wilderness to get back to the city, and then that was about it. So you met a dark stranger in a bar, and Aragorn sat back there and gave you another mission to go do. And anyway, and that was basically how cities, for the first several years of the game, nobody did very much with any kind of city adventure. And then Bob Bledsaw and the boys, and actually Bob wasn't first, Bob would have been second. The first one, this first city that I can think of that came out was in the Empire of the Petal Throne box set. Mm-hmm. And they actually detailed quite a bit about the city. Now that city might have been more dangerous than the wilderness because of the weird, six-armed guys walking around and the evil politics of the stuff, and the fact that there were no saving throws against magic when people would cast a spell at you. But I think that would probably qualify as the first city I can think of, and that was in 1975. And then in early 76, and this of course is very near and dear to my heart, there was an ability to subscribe to this new company, Judges Guild, for you could buy this initial installment for, I think it was $4.95, and then for $20 they promised they'd send you something 6 times a year. Those of you who don't know, pretty sure, either myself and I think I've got Marshall beat now, I probably have the largest Judges Guild collection in the world. I'm a big fan of Judges Guild, and I've got 2 or 3 copies of each of everything they ever made, including initial installments still in envelopes and stuff like that. But we got this neat little city that was a pamphlet about that big, with about 16 pages that described what's later became the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. And the neat part about that is, like, the dudes in shops had names, and it had random tables for, okay, if you found a hippogriff egg, how much is it worth? Because the whole thing was, hippogriff eggs, those are worth something, because you can, make them into hippogriffs someday, maybe. And then out of that,
Rubble hard enough when a hippogriff comes in.
exactly, yeah, totally. So out of that, Bob and Bill Owen spawned a pretty cool supplement, and by about 1978, they had fully detailed out the city-state of the Invincible Overlord into a pretty nice book with detailing about 500 different shops. It had cool rules and stuff like that. And I think almost everybody who was playing D&D in about 1978 and 79 used the city-state of the Invincible Overlord as Greyhawk, as whatever city they called their homebrew city, as the city-state of the Invincible Overlord if they were playing in a Wilderlands-type campaign, or as any other city. We go to the city, we need to find a Boyer Fletcher to make us arrows. Can we find an elf who can make magic arrows? I don't know. Can you? You go to Teal Street, and lo and behold, there's some guy with a hilarious, usually some sort of rhyming name that Bob had written in that was an elf that made arrows. So that guy's Boyer Fletcher shop was in every city in the world, because boy, if you needed to find that, you'd do that. And then that was really good, and it was a nice city, and especially when they added the dungeons beneath the city with the product of Wraith Overlord, and that's where the adventuring in the city got really good, because then every DM who found that thing started saying, hey, what if my player characters get into a fight in the city and get arrested? What happens to them? Well, we throw them in the dungeon. What's the dungeon? And most of the time was you'd throw them in, you'd steal their stuff, or you'd take some money away from them, or whatever. They'd pull in some political favor from Aragorn, who'd sent them on the last 7 missions. But the neat part of that was, in the city-state, you got thrown in the dungeon, man. They threw you in the dungeon. And you had to find your way out. And if you found your way out and you lived through it, great, you were free. And that was sort of the rule around there. You had to get past Emig the Fourth with the autocannon. That was always pretty fun. And so that was sort of the first foray into a usable supplement that everybody could use for a city. And it was stock and trade for everybody I ever played with for many, many years. And it's been redone now. Well, we did it. Mayfair did it. And I think the Judges Guild guys are redoing it right now. Actually, I know they are, because I pledged their big pledge, so I get to be the Invincible. I get to be the Dwarven. I'm now the Dwarven King. Marshall was mad as hell when I pledged, because I got it right before he pushed the button. He actually called me and said, "Damn it, that was you, wasn't it?" And I was like, "Yeah." Then the interesting thing from there was, still the main focus of the game, and the main focus of certainly of TSR and of Judges Guild and everybody else, was still on the outdoors and wilderness and underground. And they had that one city, and everybody sort of used bits and pieces of it. And then a really interesting thing happened in about 1982. And this is something that is fairly obscure, though you can still find copies on eBay occasionally. There was a company that came up called Game Lords. And they wrote a system called Thieves Guild, where almost the entire focus of the adventure and the campaign was city-based.
It's all urban.
It's all urban. And so the trick was all the characters had to be thieves. That was given piece number 1. Number 2 was they wrote a detailed city called the Free City of Haven, which is about $30-$40, maybe 50 if you find a really nice copy on eBay these days. And then the adventures were stuff like go to the Grand Duke's dress ball and pick people's pockets and rip off brooches off of stupid noble ladies, and mug the guy who's the silversmith that's transversing from city to city. And the entire focus really of that whole Game Lords line, and I want to say they produced about 15 or 16 books before the lead author was killed in a car wreck, actually, and Tadashi just won't let those rights go, man. I've been fighting to get them for a while, but the main focus of that really was urban adventures. And myself and a bunch of other people I know then used the City-State of the Invincible Overlord, because it was an actual D&D speak instead of the Free City of Haven, which was not. It was in something with way too many stats. And we used a lot of those adventures in the early days. We'd use the find the treasure map, and then you have to go down in the sewers of the city to get the thing, and that type of thing. So it was sort of almost a modified dungeon crawl a lot of times. But the real difference was in the early 80s, and then Harn and 2,000 other guys came out with various other cities that were much, much less detailed than those two priors. And Judges Guild also, you guys, of course, they did the Tyrannus book, which is sort of I guess a Byzantine feel to a city, and then the City State of the World Emperor, which the fatal flaw in that thing is the map's not freaking numbered. So you got something twice as big as the City State of the Invincible World with a map of a city with no code keys on it of where anything is, and it was really tough to use that one. So everybody pretty much just dropped back to the City State. But the real difference in that era of the game was that instead of just going in and buying a mule, 10 iron spikes, a backpack, a 11-foot pole is the joke in my game. They always buy 11-foot poles, and that type of thing at the local vendor. It actually codified itself into part of the adventure, and that was really something new that was done. And you can even see that through later modules with things like what TSR did, like Village of Hamlet, and even when Gary Gygax wrote Necropolis with Legendary Adventures, a lot of the focus of the early parts of those adventures were on interaction within a town or a city.
Well, nothing becomes easy with a city.
It's hard.
Or public city, right? Nothing comes easy. And the beauty, go back to the city state is, okay, we go back to the city and we want to buy a bunch of arrows. Like you said, hey, forget it. That was the hardest thing in the world to do. You start rolling on those charts, and the next thing you know, you're in an alley and there's 8 ogres standing there. Okay, that was the beauty of the city state was the randomness of the whole thing, but still codified in one giant product. Yeah, with fantastic map. I mean, everyone used it. You're right. Everyone used it for every city they ever went in because that's just what you needed to do with that product. And it holds true today as OSR gamers in this room. I mean, you can pull out City State today and use it every bit as you could back in 1977. Mm-hmm. And it makes it a fantastic product. And I don't know that anyone's really come along and match that feel or even content to a large degree. And I'm not, as much as you love Judges Guild, I'm not this huge. I love their stuff. It's just, but some you read it and you just got to pull your hair out. You're like, you got to be kidding me, But and I know there's a certain greatness to that. But
well, what part? Like, there's an alley cat that's a demigod.
Well, yeah.
I love that. I'm behind alley cats as demigods.
It's cool.
That alley cat's name is Hamaracus, by the way.
Right. And there is a certain beauty to it, but that's kind of what I was saying with the city state. There's nothing easy about going to the city state and doing anything, right? Yeah. As what cities to me do in the game, it does transform your game into, hey, go find this for me. I lost this incredibly important artifact that will rule the world, but I just misplaced it. Go find it out in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. Well, great, we did all that. Now we go back to the city and we want to take it easy. There is no taking it easy in those kinds of things. And that's.
Well, I think it depends on the scope of the game. I mean, at least these days. Right. I mean, there's a difference between having a game that's city centric and a game where it's like city incidental.
Absolutely.
And it seems like like even now, I mean, it's perfectly reasonable to have a game where the city is incidental, or maybe there's a single city adventure, where you actually do something in town. I think that in a lot of ways, that either way you go, whether it's incidental or centric, it feels like there's so many different things that you can do with that city. I'm gonna tell you, Bill, I love Judges Guild.
Oh, yeah.
I am not a fan of knowing where every single freaking thing is. That drives me crazy. Yeah. But the nice thing about the Judges Guild product is you don't freaking need that.
Need to, yeah.
Like if you pull out like Ready Ref sheets, they have the same stuff that's reprinted from seriously, right? That's what I'm gonna roll 2d6 a bunch of times on these charts.
Thing that came in basically the Ready Ref City portion of the Ready Ref sheets is what came out in that original supplement that you bought when you bought.
Yeah.
And the dungeon tack cards, those were cool too.
I think they added like a couple of things from the like the ruins generator, to And
absolutely.
there you go. There. The beautiful thing. If you are an old school gamer who does not have one of those, get your hands on one. It's awesome, and you can get them fairly cheap.
$10 eBay.
Yeah, $10.
It's what's his name? The guy,
Mike Battleato.
Mike Battleato's got
like
10
500
cases
copies of them. Yeah. The other thing, the interesting thing, and I'll go ahead and plug this guy's stuff, and I can never remember his name, but the D30 guy.
LeBlanc. Richard LeBlanc.
His stuff is fantastic for that, and it's just, it's D30 based, but it's called all the product. They're for sale in there someplace, but they're just awesome for rapidly generated city stuff.
Roy's booth.
Roy's booth. Yeah. But then, and so I do have to shamelessly plug. Okay, so we started a Kickstarter today for the Blight, which is a Paris-like 12th century Paris-like city. It's out today. We're already $13,000.
All right.
After about 6 hours. And then, of course, like I was saying earlier, how things got. You're right. It doesn't have to be city-centric necessarily. Keep on the borderlands. Great example.
Absolutely. And, but then as well, like while that's still the city or the keep, there, it's incidental, but it's so anthemic to that adventure. I mean, how much time does Gary spend on talking about the freaking keep? And I'm going to break my own rule of saying, I don't care where everything is. And knowing where everything is there, it's only like 5 things, so it's not hard to deal with.
Right.
But that really tells you what he chose to write about in the limited space that he had to actually include the city part of the adventure. And that really tells you a lot about how it should feel. To be there in that place.
Well, it can change the dynamic. I think
Absolutely.
is where I was getting at with having to see with everything laid out. And I agree. I as much as I love them, I hardly ever use them. Right, cities. I just don't. And not because I don't like them or anything else, but most of the adventure is out, right?
Yeah.
But it gives you an opportunity every once in a while. You just want to change it up. There's plenty of products out there, and it will totally change your game. It'll be a totally different game, like you said, than traditional adventure.
Right.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
Totally change your
I
game.
think Bill makes a good point, and that's almost a tonal shift for your players.
Yep.
Because if you're running an outdoor adventure or a dungeon crawl, your players have this particular mindset that they're doing. The moment that
City is a safe place.
precisely the moment they
And
get
the dungeon
to
is a
city,
bad place.
precisely, and if you decide to shift it to an urban setting for the city, suddenly it's almost it's no longer a dungeon crawl. It's no longer murder hobo central. There's a degree of interaction with NPCs that you don't have in the dungeons. There's a degree of having this veneer of civility that they now have to do. So there is this tonal shift that the players need to buy into if you're even going to have a city-based adventure, if that's what you've already done. If you've already had the outdoor dungeon crawl kind of slaughter fest.
Yeah, and you can expose them to different dynamics of terror and fear.
Precisely.
Right? It doesn't all have to be a monster who charges
Right.
on the corridor. It could be, hey, you broke the law. I mean, what's that thing in city state, right? If you're not a certain level, you can't wear plate mail or walking on the
Right,
street.
Yeah, and the gang
I mean,
that's
you
running
can-
around.
Because they just put out your
First, the guys in play
You can do
the
all
society
kinds-
in charge of suppressing riffraff or
yeah,
something
you
like
can
that.
do all kinds of fun stuff like that and put a little bit of fear in like so just change the tone. That's a perfect way of it. You said it better than I could ever say it. So, and just change it up.
I'm going to side a little bit with Adam. Not that
There's no sides.
There's no side.
There's no sides. We're all on the same side.
What I think we're talking around is judging style, because there are
Yeah.
different judging styles and different group styles that they have. And I'm much more on the side of laissez-faire urban environments because in my campaigns, it's there for a reason. It's there to be a gold sink for the players. It's there for them to restock and rearm, lay up, get charged too much for a tavern, an inn room, that kind of stuff, and to pick up plot hooks.
Yep.
And that's all I need it for. And the other side of that for the players is, I learned the hard way back in the day, is if you just lay the city-state out and cut them loose without anything, as much as I'm in favor of encouraging player agency, an entire table full of players will just wander the
Every
city.
different direction.
Yeah, the one
Aimlessly.
It's the never-ending sandbox.
Yeah, totally.
And that's not fun for me.
And that's what I think as a
the
GM, a lot of
judge.
times I try to make the cities less the adventure because it's so open-ended that it's hard to prepare. I mean, you don't want to
And
prepare
you-
for every opportunity or every possibility.
There are
but
like
it's
500 NPCs that you suddenly have to voice and
Exactly.
give personalities to.
Exactly.
Nobody
And-
wants
and
to do
understand
That's a lot of work.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know, man.
I like doing
I'm
that.
gonna-
I like doing that.
I
like doing
I like doing that. That's for me. I fly by the seat of my pants probably about 95% of the time when I'm GMing.
I've got 5 voices, man. There's just so much.
I kind of, I'll admit that I prepare to improvise, So there's, and I'll draw from whatever experience I'm having at the time. If I've just seen a bunch of episodes of a particular TV show, I might like grab onto a couple like character ideas, or if I was reading something, I might grab an adjective here or there, like, oh, I'm going to apply this to a character. Prep for me in an urban campaign, just I will show you my prep.
Well, the
I
problem
have
I
it here
think
with
a lot
me.
of times
I got my
you have a player that simply wants to rob the tavern, and he's
Sure.
like, well, now I got to stat out the bartender, I got to stat out the wench, I got to stat out
Why?
the guy that's
Why do you
alive
have to do
back.
that?
Well, because
What? No, you don't.
The player wants to believe they've got a real shot of actually beating the bartender.
Okay. And this is why I love Judges Guild products, because that tavern is being run by a guy who's a devil on the run, and his fireplace is a portal to the ninth grade hell.
Right.
So start something in that tavern.
And that's a two-way door.
Well,
Yeah.
here's the thing, though. There's two real great uses to that I've found that kind of transcend a little bit more even than what you're saying, or wanting to rob something or everything else. And one of them is you create it so it is a home happy place that they like, and they get to know the bartender, and then the bartender needs money from them.
But then you can wreck that, and then
totally right.
You're having so much fun with it this way. Mark Donkers, right back there, can tell you that I am very much in favor of burning down everything the players build.
And so that's in terms of using it as a gold sink. That's where Jillian could probably tell you some good stories about how they had a vendor in the town square thing. Her character had an intelligence of 4.
Oh no.
Right? And she had catnip all the time. So the catnip story is longer than that, but the cats would follow her around. Anyway, so she decided she wanted to go get some cats, and so she went to this vendor, and she's dumb as a stump, right? And she's like, how do I get a kitten? And he goes, I can get you kittens. What kind of kittens do you want? So after selling her the 11th kitten for 5 gold pieces each, that he had his buddy going and grab out of the alley from all the feral cats, he actually felt guilty, because he's like, Jesus, I've been, this chick just gave me 100 gold pieces for these kittens.
Well, to be fair, I had thousands of gold pieces. I was like, hey, whatever.
She was loaded. She was one of those sole survivors of Matt's games type thing. Anyway, so the guy, he ended up being kind of like a character then that they'd interact with when they go back to the city, and he'd send him up.
You need more kittens?
No. He'd become a patron. He actually felt, he was like a neutral evil merchant. He actually was like, oh man, this is just wrong. I can't do this anymore. This is so evil. But they became a patron, and so then he became kind of an adventure point focus, where when they went back to Bargegate, they would always go and they'd hang out with this guy, and they'd visit with him, and he'd put him up in a spare bedrooms in his mansion and that kind of thing, because he knew he could fleece them for a couple of 100 gold pieces when they were there. They didn't mind. They weren't getting mugged or robbed or their stuff stolen while they were in the city, and it worked out. It worked out as a very long-term kind of fun interaction, where I really got to develop a half dozen of the characters in the city and that kind of thing. The other thing about destroying what they love. Look at something like Keep on the Borderlands, man. How those humanoids siege that thing after they become friends with the little kid that works for the blacksmith as a fetch and carry kid, and they kill that kid or something. Right. You could piss a party off. They're mad, and man, they'll go out there immediately. They just go on the rampage. And same thing if you have the bandits siege the town where their henchmen came from or stuff like that. There's some really, you can either make them love it, or I've had a lot of luck in. Because I hate running city adventures too. They're a nightmare, man. It's the endless maze, like you said. But
it's a DM trap, is what
it really is.
I like that trap. I'm gonna say,
I
love
great.
living in that trap.
It's different if you go in with an adventure. Okay, this is a town crawl adventure, and you're prepped for it. That's different.
Right.
It's really hard to wig it.
I agree with you 1,000%, because what I think it lets you do as a DM is it does let you fly by the seat of your pants a lot more than it does a straight line module adventure, right? A city gives you an opportunity to do things that you don't normally get to do when you're, say, running, A1, B1, whatever, right? It does give you that little more open-endedness, and that's why I said it's a DM trap, because you can set yourself up for, okay, you guys are doing this, oh shit, next week I got to prepare for all this crap.
Well, I think a lot of the reason that works is because we have, as modern human beings, we are primarily urban, right? And so we have, we all have city experience that we can draw from. This is what it's like to live with a bunch of other people. It's fantastic to go into the wilderness and go into dungeons because we don't have those experiences, right? But we can take any of our daily experiences and translate that into a city game.
Precisely. As a matter of fact, how many of us here, when we're running an environment where there are a lot of NPCs, have drawn on people that we know in real life, our family?
Oh yeah.
My players have met basically cousins of mine. They have met college roommates. They don't know it's Ragnar the Barbarian as far as they're concerned, but they don't know it's actually Steve Thea Harris, who I roomed with for 2 years.
Right.
I think that's a really good point that you made, and that is that when you are running an urban environment, there is a point where you're preparing, but there's also a point where you're like, okay, I'm just drawing from what I know and just translating it into the fantasy setting I'm doing, the sci-fi setting I'm doing, the horror setting I'm doing, because hell, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about writing 101. You always have your writer's notebook in your head. I mean, just an hour and a half ago, I did a side quest to the Ypsilanti Walmart to get index cards, and it was an adventure getting down that road and getting in and out of the parking lot.
Yeah.
And you're gonna use that in the game later.
I sure will.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So, what questions, comments, thoughts? Why don't you guys throw some brain power into us?
Yeah, we're blathering on.
How about the city is like a bad place? Like I'm running a Dark Sun game, and most of the cities in the setting of Dark Sun are places you want to avoid because they're controlled by villains.
www.kickstarter.com. Look up the Blight. By the way, what you just said, it is shameless, but I'm not kidding. I'm totally serious. It's a bad city. You don't want to be there. It's Matt Finch wrote a joke, to Soft Kitty, Warm Kitty, a song to this. Hold on, I gotta share this with everybody. It's hilarious. So it's so Finch was obviously bored this afternoon, and after the Kickstarter launched,
Must be nice.
Evil city, dark city, deadly place to be, creepy city, Gollum city, flee, flee, flee. It will be. I'm gonna make all four of my teenage girls sing it. But yeah, it is a shameless plug. But yeah, that's really the idea. Is that it's not a very nice city. Bard's Gate's the fluffy, happy city, sorta. That'll be out in June, but it's a really different feel from this one.
Well, let's build upon that. Okay, so you have a city that is dangerous, it's evil. How would you motivate your players into visiting such a place, or just steering clear of it completely?
I mean, with me at least, I've got a Goblin City on the 13th level or the 10th level of Rappahannock, right? Mm-hmm. You can go there. You can trade. They're all psyched as long as as long as
know what you're getting into.
Yeah, as long as you know what you're getting into, and acknowledging that you would be the Phoenician trader showing up in Rome, so your rights are pretty limited, right? And if you screw up, if there's a dispute, they're going to blame you. So again, we get back to what Jim said earlier about a gold sink. It's a great gold sink because you might be losing double the money. Then again, you could be safe down there in the Goblin City versus cruising around getting eaten by vampires one level lower.
Well, there's a point
to
too.
use Andrew's example of Dark Sun, in that whole world of Dark Sun, you might not be safe in the cities, but where the hell else are you going to go?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, that is the whole world. Like the world is deadlier than the cities. The cities are deadly. The world is even deadlier.
Yeah.
You are going to die
when
you're
Mad
not
Max,
outside.
right? I mean, that's basically Dark Sun is Mad Max.
I always think of it as Barsoom and Dune having a baby.
Well, I appreciate the question because mainly in the last 30 years I've run a post-apocalyptic campaign, either Game World or Mutant Prop Classics, and so there are no urban environments except, there's a home village in the hothouse jungle that's bamboo huts with a wooden palisade. That's their home base, and that's where they tank back up. The urban environments are all ruins from thousands of years ago, and that's easy bait.
They're dungeons.
That's where the artifacts
that's
are.
flipping it around.
Yeah,
that's squaring the circle.
Actually, that's a good point.
It does. Anybody ever
Yeah,
read
flips it completely around. Yeah.
provided 50 taverns, 50 blacksmith shops, 50.
There are a couple. There is a couple.
I would look on like RPG Now. I'll bet somebody somebody has on your store too. Sorry, sorry. Yes, open. Sorry, that's true.
There actually were a couple, and I don't remember who made them.
But there's like a couple of companies that do just like lists of things.
Yeah.
I'm sure
That
that.
seems like a way to get away from the trap, because I agree, I'm getting ready to start a city. And the problem is, just like you said, 95% of the city, they're never going to go to.
Right.
Yeah, don't spend your time describing it.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of what you want is in that ready rev sheet that you can still get for $8 or $9 today on eBay.
I had a campaign a couple years ago. I ran it. It was a Pathfinder campaign. I started it off in a small. I described it as it's a mining logging village, and I just did a couple sentences on the main NPCs in town, the ones I thought they would be most likely to interact with: the jeweler, the blacksmith, the guards at the gate, who's the mayor, and I gave a physical description of each. But then I figured, if they go off the map and go somewhere completely unexpected, I would just make that up as I went.
There was a company that did, and I don't remember the name of them, in the early 80s that did, I think they called it the Complete something or other.
They did the Complete Tavern. They did the Complete. What else?
Well, Complete Tavern is still the same guys.
Is it Flying Buffalo?
Might have been Flying Buffalo.
Yeah, and they had a bunch of those in the late 70s.
They did
early 80s.
they did books that would have 40 shops in it.
That's one of the things.
Those are
that
tough to
Flying Buffalo
find,
did.
but-
Flying Buffalo did all the city books, which
Yeah.
is like each one
Yeah,
has
that's
like
it. It's
10 or
Flying
12
Buffalo.
fully detailed locations that, it's like, hey, I wanna go find a temple of blah, blah, or I wanna go find a candle shop. It's like, well, where the hell am I gonna find, I can make this up on the fly, or, hey, this is actually interesting, there's a freaking candle shop in this book.
Check out the D30 stuff that's for sale in there. It's at the OSR booth, one of them.
Big Dragon.
Yeah,
Dragon, yeah.
they're real. That stuff. I mean, there's stuff like that in there. Just page through it, see what you see. It's awesome. It's really good. It's like the Ready Ref sheets.
The one of those books that's I think most appropriate is the Sandbox Companion.
Yeah.
The other one's a DM's Companion. That one's not, to me, it's not as useful. It's more, that's
It's,
more
it's
like,
also more heavily
Yeah.
geared strictly towards, here's extra stuff you can drop in the dungeon or wilderness.
Yeah.
It's the green one, right?
no, the green one's the one that I don't recommend.
it's the blue one.
The blue one's
The
the
blue
one I
one's
do
the
recommend.
sandbox,
Yeah.
it's got tons of stuff.
And then
Supplements or pills?
yeah, there's we also produced a book like
Find
this.
out what happens.
It's out of print, sadly. Now it is out of print, and they're gone. Sold the last 3 copies at Gamehole Con a couple
What was
weeks ago
that?
called the Tome of Adventure
Oh.
Design.
Oh, I've got.
It's got big
physical
chunks
copies.
in there for
Oh, that's a
city
good book.
random
That's a great
generation.
book.
Bill,
Huh.
I've got a box full of those.
You do? You got all of
Home
them.
Adventure Design?
Go buy them from him.
I
He's the
got a
one who's
box
got
full
them.
of them, yeah.
That's
I
it,
got a
they're
couple
gone.
of them here,
I'm
and
out.
I got a whole more box back in my house.
That's
I
one
am-
of
I
my-
am-
We're not getting many left
that's
now.
one of my favorite books.
Yeah, that's a great book.
That and, somebody needs to get with, Goodman and add on a city version of the alphabet books.
Yeah. The other thing you
That's
could do,
very
Matt
good.
Finch did a book of actually the randomized city adventures. It's on Lulu. You can get it on Lulu. It probably costs about $10. This is still, it's Mythmere Publications. He's actually my partner now, but this predates our me acquiring the company.
It's possible if you go look at Roy's booth that he might have that, because he's got some.
He might
Matt's-
have it.
he's
He has
got
some of Matt's
Lulu
old stuff.
over there.
John Hirschberger and those guys are the ones who produced the hard copies of them, but Lulu still does make them. Let me see if I can find it. Because what it has is it has like 300 NPCs with a paragraph about each one in like a little strip that big. It'll say, and all it says is a level 5 fighter. It'll have like a couple of sentences about his motivations or goals, like he's really a psycho killer in disguise, or he has he's in love with the woman who runs the dairy farm or something like that. And that, there might be some interesting thing about him, like he has a treasure map for sale, or there might not be anything interesting about him. He just is a dude who's in love with the milkmaid. And he's and his profession is this. And then in addition to that, it's got like randomized tables of different shops and stuff like that. It's pretty good. We just haven't redone it yet. It's actually a lot like the Tome of Adventure Design, but it is very specific to a city.
What's that other, did you have 1,000 tables or something like that? The book of 1,000 tables, or you had?
I have a book. There's 2. There's one that's treasures and one that's encounters, but none of them are city.
Okay.
There are city encounters in it, but it's we have Mother of All treasure tables,
the
Mother
one,
of All.
yeah.
Those are all out of print too. I think we still sell them as PDFs, but they're gone.
My favorite book like that is probably Dungeon Dozen.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
good book.
that is a good book.
There's another book that hits that area, that's city-specific, that has come out within the past 10 years, twice, that we haven't
Yeah.
even mentioned yet.
Yeah, I don't know how we got this far without talking about it.
That's Zach S.'s
Bornheim, yeah.
published by Lamentations
Yeah,
of Flame
yeah,
Princess.
yeah.
That thing is, for as slim a book it is, it's such a good, you got that at your booth?
Well, I got the small Lamentations of Flame Princess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, but not Bornheim.
I've got Vornheim.
In that case, the alley cat's not a demigod, he just has an open relationship.
But that, as far as recent city books that have come out, that one is kind of tops.
And I will say that for me at least, that's something that I've drawn a lot of inspiration from, rather than, because it is a little bit more improvisational than some of the the earlier stuff. I mean, I like I said, I still have a lot of love for the earlier stuff that tells you where stuff is, but I like the flow of of Vornheim, where you draw the city by writing the numbers on a piece of paper, and then it doesn't even matter. And you're looking at things more in a district kind of perspective than anything else. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
I run a lot of city games. Tonight, after this, I'll be running my a night in Ur-Haddad thing for DCC, which I don't prep at all for, except for immediately before the session. and I wanted to share my prepping tools with you guys. Because the first is this novel by Italo Calvino called Invisible Cities. And if you haven't read it, I do recommend it. It's a super thin read. This is my random table. I'm going to flip to a page in here. I'm going to get a description of a city, and that's where the adventure is going to be based. There's a part of the city that's like this, and that's what it's going to be. And I guess because of my own personal style, I take a lot of plots from Burroughs. So Cities of the Red Knight is the thing that's currently on my, I'm going to steal something from this, and that's ended up with some really weird stuff getting, because it's William S. Burroughs, that's ended up with some weird stuff happening in my games, but big deal. That's why you're coming to my table anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
What I love about what you just shared, even though it doesn't relate directly to those particular books, is that's a keystone to what we're talking about. The only reason to have an urban environment in a fantasy role-playing game is that to the extent that you can simulate the Appendix N literature, because it can't be a boring town. Punjab, Urhadad.
And your particular Appendix N might not be.
Conan the Barbarian couldn't go 2 blunks drunk without running into an elder god. Right?
Right.
And that's what the players want.
Civilization, ancient.
I think when you brought up the Dark Sun City, that's really hit upon it. I mean, the city does have to have a vibe. It just can't be a city.
Absolutely.
Right? It has to have some sort of vibe.
Aesthetics are important, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Generic medieval town, who's going there?
Boring,
I don't care.
Right.
No thanks, man.
Just pull the Village of Hamlet out and go. You don't need anything else, and there's nothing wrong with Village of Hamlet. Don't get me wrong, I love it. But it's got to have a vibe.
Yeah.
Right? And it could be an evil vibe. It could be uber good vibe. It could be, merchant vibe, whatever. But that does help you too as a DM.
Absolutely. Once you have an aesthetic in mind, then you know along what lines are you going to improvise. Along what lines, that's your guide. It's going to tell you where to go with things. When you have a choice, which way does this go? You go towards your aesthetic, and you can't be steered wrong.
Precisely. Actually, what you're doing is basically you're giving your city, it's yet another NPC. The city itself is a living, breathing creature.
Yeah, totally. Another book that should be mentioned that we haven't is Joe Browning's book, Magical Mystical Medieval Society. That's another one that would have lots and lots of random tables and stuff for you to spot generate a blacksmith shop. It's probably still available at least as a PDF someplace. I don't know if you can buy the original. Then the other thing, and this is a lot of what we were harking to.
He did a second edition of that fairly recently too.
Mm-hmm. And he got a gold Emmy for the first one. I know he did a really nice job on it. Well, a lot of what you guys were saying, or particularly Jim and Bill, and what I said earlier too, is get a city product, whether it's City State of the Invincible Overlord or whatever else. Index the sucker. And say, I need this guy, I need this shot. Just pull it out and use it. I mean, you don't have to use it as a cohesive animal. I certainly don't. I've got a 500-page city book we produced that I've never used once as a cohesive animal, but I use chunks out of it. And it doesn't matter whether they're in the northern part of the Gulf of Acados or whether they're down in the other side of the desert from where the wastelands are there. I can still pull one out of that book, and I'll have a rope maker or a animal trainer, which is what she's always trying to find is animal trainers, and or something like that. And it really becomes a useful. It's still a random generated table. It just happens to have a bunch of detail to it. Is a good way to put it.
And I think why random generated tables work so great in cities is because cities, I think we need to remember as DM, a city is a very dynamic place where dungeons can be kind of static, right? A city, there's all kinds of stuff going on. It's got nothing to do with the PCs, right? A city's not waiting there for the PCs to roll in and just tear it up. Well, that could be fun, but that, in general, there's other people already tearing it up.
I don't know about your players, but that's my players.
Right, but there's already people usually there tearing it up too, right? So they got to get mixed into that whole mixed thing going on. So, a city adventure is nice because you can involve, there's a lot going on. There should be a lot going on in your city.
Yeah.
I mean, good, evil, bad, indifferent, whatever, there's always stuff going on. And it's easy just to, supplant stuff in, either for a further adventure you got going on down the line, whatever. We're doing, and since Bill's plugging, I'm plugging too, we're doing a lot of sewer adventures right now, our GC series. And basically, you've got this, whatever city you want. I don't care. I don't tell you what city you got to use. You got X city. Sweet. Well, guess what? They built X city on top of this ancient X city. And ancient X city said, we're tired of being down here. We're coming up. So the PCs are constantly up here, right? And they're constantly being pulled down here. So, there's something going on in the city. Yeah. Versus the PCs just going on in the city,
and that's great. That's the whole concept behind Tecumno. I mean, that was you had the ancients the ancient Jesus and other 10,000 other things I still can't pronounce after this many years.
Never. It doesn't matter.
Underneath, and they're crawling up out of the dungeon at you.
It's the poltergeist plot. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, you built your suburb on top of
Totally,
buried
man. Yeah, totally.
Damn it!
And the interesting thing with that particular product back in 1975 was they mapped the whole city and they didn't map any of the dungeon. So it was like that was the thing that was weird. You got the thing. It's like there's this huge dungeon catacomb underneath it. None of it's mapped, but the city itself was mapped, and that was the first time anybody did anything like that. But that's great. I'm glad you guys are doing that. That's useful. As
Because
hell.
I don't want to design the city.
I get it, man. I don't either. But
It's more fun designing stuff destroying cities.
Yeah,
right?
Greg Vaughn designs
Yeah.
my cities for
Yeah.
me, but I'm a wilderness guy myself.
So, do you have any other questions out there? No? Don, nothing? Come on.
I don't have any questions at this moment, thank you.
Comments?
You'll get a C for that, young man. I mean, if you guys want, there are some. One of the things that the one-off city adventure type thing. There is some stuff here, and I'm not certain who else of my compadres here probably has some in print as well. But stop by his booth or something. Look at Lost City Baracus, for example. We have, and that actually combines a lot of what you were just saying. It's like you've got, without throwing a spoiler in, but you've got a lawful good temple that probably isn't. And they're doing some really devious things that the players have to, sort their way through to solve. But it creates, and it does eventually create a dungeon adventure inside the city, similar to what Bill was talking about, where they wind up in the vampire's house, right? So, there's some creative things that can be done with that as one shots that are pretty good.
Sorry.
Running a straight city campaign would make my head explode. Yeah.
So I was listening to that talk. Great. It's not necessarily a question, it's just listening to you guys talk some more, but for each of you, have you had some character or player in one of your games do something you thought was the most either exciting or most interesting thing or intriguing thing that was memorable to you? If you could pick one, what would it be in a city?
Within a city.
Can it be a jungle village in a hothouse apocalypse?
Sure.
I'm very proud as a judge of having successfully caused my players to accidentally act like heroes because they're murder hobos, mutant murder hobos. That's their thing, that's what they do. And I was able to set up a campaign arc that brewed over a very long time where they came back to the village with the palisade walls, and it's been taken over by an evil NPC that they captured who appeared to reform and has now infiltrated their tribal elders and has taken the place over. And so they had to go assault their own little village that ended with a mutant I rolled up using the Dungeon Crawl Classics dragon tables, which is not going to be your daddy's dragon.
No.
Land in the middle of the village and just crush a third of it. And suddenly my players are like, we're the heroes, and they went to town. And I thought that was
awesome.
pretty good to get the murder hobos to jump in and defend their home turf. I was very proud of them for that.
One of the things I found with city adventures is you can create some really neat ways to kill off your player character.
Yeah.
One game I'm involved in, we threw attacking rose bushes at them. And now this is a first or second level party, and they were getting hit point 1, 2 hit points at a time and getting knocked down. Well, they finally figured it out what to do, and they got through it, but they sure hurt at the end of it. And everyone said they had a great time.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Is making sure they have a great time. To answer your question from my perspective, probably the coolest thing, and this has actually transcended into a lot of the work we've done, was my college group, who were not murder hobos. These guys were like the lawful good creeps. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was Clark Peterson, John Spiegel the Mage out of Rappahannock, for those of you guys who've seen this guy named John Murdoch, and Dale Haynes, who was Flail the Great, the Cleric, and all those guys telling you about all these characters. But when they completed what ended up being the Sword of Air adventure, and they retrieved those big 3 holy artifacts, they actually had this little village that they sort of patronized. And in OD&D, most of you guys know this. I mean, the objective was build a wizard's tower, build a castle. So they'd all done this. They built so there's the big priest of Thyr right next to the wizard tower, right next to the thing. But then they get these 3 holy artifacts that have this wide area of effect of like protection from evil and stuff. And so they actually went out recruiting to other cities and saying, hey, man, come, we got plenty of money. Come live and farm our land, no taxes, And so they ended up creating a city of their own, basically by recruiting. They went out on like a a marketing call to all the local oppressed peasants and stuff, along with their men-at-arms that had come with them and everything else, where it was interesting. But they did it from a good guy perspective to create this, I guess really a theocracy, but they were all lawful good.
But if you're in charge and you make the laws, there's some
Yeah,
flexibility there.
Flexibility. Yeah, Clark was the death penalty prosecutor for Clark County, Nevada, right? So put that in perspective. So the law is definitely the law. But the fact that they were able to do that, and actually they spent probably 3 months of real time. And of course we were in college, so we were either chasing girls, drinking beer, or playing D&D pretty much. We studied every now and then. We played 3-4 times a week. They spent at least 3 months just getting their castles built and developing those villages, and then making sure they could protect the villages. And I was throwing, I was really being shitty, man. I was throwing, wandering umber hulks burrowing up underneath the blacksmith shop, and just totally screwing with them about it because I was bored. They were like, "Come on, guys, the building of your wall around your fortress, it's going fine. When are you going to go do something?" And but they really loved it. They enjoyed it. The players enjoyed the hell out of it.
I think you guys familiar with the TSR Slaver series? Mm-hmm. Okay, originally that whole series starts out in a city called Highport, which was once a regular city that got overrun by humanoids and everything. Now it's kind of a humanoid mixed evil kind of city, right? So I got the PCs going to the city, and they're going to infiltrate the city, right, and find out where these slavers are coming from and all this kind of stuff. Well, we're just running, trying to run as best I can, prepare as best I can, and one of these bozos winds up getting arrested, okay, thrown in jail. And I'm like, okay, so they're going to break him out. Right? They're not going to try and bribe anything. They're going to break him out, right? Because they're just we're going to take matters in our hands. Well, during the breakout, everything went south. Another one got captured and tossed in the clink. And I'm thinking, well, they are never going to get to A1. I'm to sit here and screw around with them, mess around with the city. Well, it actually worked out perfect because they all wound up getting captured at some point or another, and now I got thrown into A1.
So you skip right to A3 for that, man.
You really could. So it's kind of like deja vu all over again. That kind of goes back to what you were saying about the dynamic nature of a city. You can just kind of go with it, and the pre-planned stuff, no matter really what I pre-planned, it just it got kind of crazy.
The pre-planned stuff seems to work less well in a city. So like when you look at like the big plot boom of like the 80s, when we did see more of these city adventures, a lot of those if you're not like strictly following the progression of this is the way the plot goes,
Dragonlance all over it.
Oh, seriously,
really?
That was my.
It goes the Waterdeep trilogy of adventures.
Yeah.
The second edition days, and it was after probably halfway through the first module, I gave up because the players had already diverted so far from the plot that it was like I can't even begin to follow the rest of this because one of the PCs married the female chick who turned out to be Mistra, the goddess. So I'm like, well, there throws out the whole plot line for the rest of the adventures.
Right.
Good.
That was the back.
You don't need it.
I know exactly. It turned out to be a much better adventure.
You're smarter than the guy who wrote that thing anyway.
That was the urban environment backfire I was talking about in the beginning, because even in a dungeon setting with limited options, your players inevitably will turn left when you need them to turn
or
right.
Drill holes through the
Or
wall
find
and
the secret back door to the whole dungeon and go straight to level 4, right?
Yeah.
So
Good.
in an urban great, yeah,
Well,
it's great.
good.
We're on board.
But a city environment, those left turns are multiplied by factors of 10.
Yeah.
There's a million left turns they can take.
Yeah, no matter how many times I've told them don't go down the well, they always seem to.
And talk about don't.
But isn't that great? Because you know what's down the well, it's going to screw with them. In a city, you just make up the thing, and that's fantastic. Like down the well, there's this awful monster down there waiting to eat them. Okay, I'll put it on that monster down the alley instead. It's if you want them to stay on track. I worry about that kind of logic of trying to keep them on track.
I never can keep players on track.
No, you can't. The cool thing about City 2 is I'm going to give off. We were talking about dungeon adventures, right? Mm-hmm. Don't split up the party. The PCs never wanted the DM to split them apart. We always want to try to split them apart, see what the hell will happen, right?
Right.
And we don't care what happens. I don't care what happens to my dungeon, right? I don't care what happens, but just let's see what happens when I give them a split in the dungeon. Well, in the city, they're gonna split up.
Yeah.
One guy's going over there, another guy's going over there. You can have all kinds of.
Then you have to DM for
I just want to be clear.
Uh-huh.
I'm all for
Now
the
you're
players
right.
going
The
left.
DM trap.
I just only want to
that.
work so hard. running
Because then
games.
you
I'm gonna tell you,
sitting at the table twiddling their thumbs while you go talk to Bob about what he's doing with the black.
That's
And you
kinda what I was
come
getting back to
and say,
cities
"What
that
do you
do-
wanna do?" And you
yeah.
gotta go over there and do his little thing.
That's
And then-
right, yep, the DM trap that a city can be. You can trap yourself, right? It's gonna be fun to split them up. Oh, well, what did I just do?
But
You
it's
know?
also, that's interesting, because I also see it as being kind of a trap for the players.
Oh, it is?
Because, as opposed to a dungeon where their actions have very little over-encompassing consequences. In a city, these are living, breathing people who are going about their lives. And so when a player walks in and decides to rob X or murder Y, there are legitimate consequences that affect the next 10 people here, the next 20 people here.
100 villagers.
I have a question.
I yield the floor to Doug.
Yeah, Doug, aren't you supposed to be up here talking?
I have a better question. Who left the door open?
And I don't know how to run my city game. It's so overwhelming. The players can go everywhere. Did we start the conversation?
Yeah, that's where we already started.
I'm gonna ask
We've
you
already
again,
been there.
So, fuck it. So the players can go anywhere, and I can't plan for it. So I'm very intimidated. One of my players wants to go over here, one wants to go over there.
You should,
Obviously, what we
when
do
this
is-
ends up on Save or Die, you should listen to the beginning of this conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you'll be good.
Yeah.
You'll know what to do.
Either that or
Harder questions?
Yeah.
either that, Doug, or there's the D30 companion book that's in there, in for sale in there. It's not mine. It's somebody else's.
Well, I want
Ready references?
to answer Doug's question
Who's
directly.
better, Fafford or Mouser? Hands. Hands down for Mouser, hands up for Fafford. Do it.
Fafford, man.
Oh, I'm going with the spellcaster. It's Mouser.
Everybody
Mouser.
here,
I'm with you. The bills are together.
Nobody's winning. We got fucking Adams for Fafford, right?
I'm fine
hands
for
down.
Fafford. I'm for Fafford.
So
Yeah.
it's unanimous.
I'm asking
Oh, no, it's not.
No, you guys are like Mouser.
Mouser's
Building.
better, right?
I got questions.
All right,
Yes.
no question? All right, thanks, Doug.
Half my opinion, half question. I think the city is a great way to introduce weird shit in your campaign. Because you think about a lot of the classic games RCs like Sigil. That's where you send your players when you want them to rub shoulders with demons and stuff, And it's a way of easing your players into weirdness very gently. I think is you run into some weird shit in the back alleys of the city. And my question is, I guess, do you guys agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, because you can introduce something in a non-threatening environment in a way, right? So you've got them you've got your players in a situation.
Or a seemingly non-threatening
Well,
environment. 'Cause
right,
I'm thinking
right,
about your kid
right.
gang rules that were in.
Oh, yeah.
Urhadad.
That's not me, man. That was all Reverend Dr. Edgar Johnson.
Okay,
That
well,
was him, but yeah.
I pointed you as the publisher,
Right.
editor.
Deadly fiend, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you look at Monty Cook's Tolus, that's exactly what you're talking about, right? And it basically, the city's ruled by a frickin' pit fiend, man. Right, but you can go in the city, you can interact with the city, nothing's gonna eat you unless you do something that you deserve to get eaten for, probably.
Which the players will do.
Yeah, they'll do. And,
Why not?
I think that the real point there is that the city's kind of like a safe environment to introduce how weird you want your game to be, like the extremes of your game you can ease players into in a relatively cushy environment, because there's an expectation of safety to some degree or another in a city, and so the alley cat god in the back alley, that makes sense. That's our bar for weirdness in this relatively safe environment. Doug would probably comment that there's weird shit happening all the time in Langbar. That's how it goes. Sigil, you're sending people to Sigil so that they can experience the weirdness of the plains in a safe environment, and so I think that really is the point of your comment, right? And is it kind of dilutes that stuff, still gives you the flavor, and makes it a little bit safer to deal with.
It lets your players do it. They don't feel like in a dungeon. If you run into a demon, you're gonna try to kill it probably. If you run into a demon,
You gotta think about it a little bit.
I don't know, man. This might be running time.
I mean, why do cities exist, right? Cities exist for mutual protection and for commerce. And so the motivation is commerce. So if you go into the city of Brass and meet the Sultan, you might not meet the Sultan, but if you go to the city of Brass, you're probably either there for commerce, diplomacy, or safety from something outside of that city of brass, right? That's the idea. So the motivation of the demon, if you will, in the city of Sigil isn't to kill and eat you. It's to get you to bring him whatever it is he needs for.
Right. There's a moderating factor there.
Yeah, the concept is it's commerce and politics more than it is just straight out violence like a dungeon is.
So it actually gives
That's
the
what the
players
swords are
a
for.
new set of role-playing skills to try to exercise, really, when you think about it.
Which I think, in a lot of cases, in old school games, is a little bit richer, right? I mean, because we don't have a ton of skills that are telling us, oh, we got to play like this, we got to roll, we got to have this many skill ranks.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, you're right.
Instead, it's
You're
like,
right.
okay, actually come up with an idea yourself,
Any-
player X, Y, or Z.
Role play, don't roll
and then,
dice.
yeah, right?
Any character can do pretty much anything he wants to do in the city, I guess.
And I think that's
I don't
why
want to
that's
really
a
say it
strength.
that way, but he doesn't. You don't have to look at my skill sheet. Oh, I can do X, Y, and Z while I'm in the city.
Right.
No, screw that. You can go do whatever you want in the city.
Right.
Now something's going to happen, but exactly.
You can even
Something's always going to happen.
Right.
No, I mean,
And something's probably happening.
Well, and
before it
what's
gets
nice in that circumstance is that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I mean,
Yeah.
and the DM's normally the goose, right? I mean, we get to say like, okay, the world's like this, have fun with it, and in some ways, in a dungeon environment, players are much more limited than they are in a city. Like we've been talking, this is the whole like fear of things going off the rails, right? Were we to pretend that any of us use rails, but the fun part is that now in a city they have as much players have as much creative power and input as the DM does. I mean, they usually have a degree of power, but it's not the same, and in a city it's so much more.
It's back to judging style, and everybody has their own, but my old school judging style is to say yes to anything the players suggest. But right, let's mediate that, and you're a player in my game. You can try anything, and there's no dice involved. Convince me. You tell me. You dress it up plausibly, and you convince me. You did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what would you, in each of your games, consider to be a standard that should be in every city that makes it interesting?
Every city. I can tell you what I don't consider to be standard that makes it interesting is a priest that can raise dead.
You mean make sure there isn't one?
Yeah. I make sure there is one around, but not in every city.
Yeah.
So if you get killed here, you got to haul ass and travel
Maybe
there.
a continent away.
Yeah, well, in my games they're more common than that. But now I'm screwed because she's 9th level or 8th level, and if she can cast Raise Dead, so I'm shit out of luck on that. But
Number 2 behind that is no magic shops that are like
no magic shops.
I want a +2.
I let people
saber.
buy potions.
We got one right here.
I let people buy potions at some of the cities that are situated like right next to dungeons. They're random, like Mithras Tower. We let people buy occasional potions, but it's random. No, because wizards don't trade scrolls, not never. The spells are way too precious to share. But like in Mithras Tower, the area outside Rapanathuk, you can sometimes get, a healing potion or a fire resistance potion or something
that
weird.
housekeeping's got to be there. I mean, like I said, there's a gold sink, right? You got to.
It's gold sink.
You got to do some of that.
Well, you've read my Wine, Women, and Song rules, right?
And I would say, I think I repeat myself when I said earlier, there's always something going on in the city, right? If my players are in the city, there's something going on. It's got nothing to do with them. And when they're in the dungeon, they probably a lot of times they feel like they're the big badasses on the block. Well, I'm gonna tell you, when they're in the city, there's a whole lot more people who are a lot more bigger and a lot more badasser than they are, and not necessarily on a stat level. Okay, it could be a politics level, it could be anything like that. I don't like the characters walking into a city saying, "Oh, I'm here. Where's the parade?"
Right.
Okay. No, none of that's gonna happen.
Yeah, the world does not
actually,
revolve around.
No, absolutely. It absolutely probably goes the other way.
Yeah, they don't like them, man. Those
No.
are creepy mercenary guys, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
wherever these guys go, bad shit happens,
right?
So
things catch fire.
Yeah, and something's, and we all know as a GM something's gonna happen when these clowns walk in the city anyway.
But yeah, magic shop's bad. I think some people run really high magic worlds though. I mean, in Pathfinder you can make anything. Like a 4th level guy or 5th level guy can make miscellaneous items.
Yeah, you should be able to make things, but you shouldn't be able to just walk into any
Kmart. I mean, your mileage varies, but there shouldn't be a store where you can purchase things that you could build adventures around questing for.
Right, exactly. I agree with you.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that
in Lankmar, that story about I think they're aliens or something, that they sell, people think they're magic items and it's just garbage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, here's your magic shop. Come on in, spend your gold.
Yeah, I've done that to people too, buying the fake magic items or the,
You got John to buy a magic walking stick that was like just cut.
Yeah, I know. It was awesome.
Well, I'd like to get to Reese's question, and I want to take a completely different answer, or tack with my answer, which is something that makes it different from the other cities. Like, what's it like to be there?
Yeah.
What's the aesthetic? What does it feel like to be there? What's the point of this city, like, from an experiential standpoint?
Give me an example.
Okay.
Is it like from a Sinbad movie city? Is it
Right, yeah.
Rome.
Like what's Rome is thematically, aesthetically different from even I want to say Constantinople, yeah.
Okay.
Because and visually we can see how that's different. We can feel how that's different. And each of those are going to be different from, say, Alexandria, to take another classical example, and Athens. Each one of these places is. Yeah, exactly, right? So each one of these places has its own, thematic repertoire that it's drawing on, and they feel differently from each one. And your experience of being in those places is going to be different. Is he?
Troublemaker.
No,
here we
no, don't call him that guy.
This guy was raising his hand. I'm raising my hand for him.
Oh, got it.
Ask your question.
You're helping?
I was saying, I already asked it.
Yeah. Good job, Doug.
Keep drinking, Doug. I'll catch up to you in a couple hours, buddy. I agree with what you said, and that's one thing. Like where you have, I like to throw a little weirdness into some of them, like the Amazon village, right?
Yeah.
Where men are second-class citizens at the end. You might be higher level than them, but you're not higher level than all 400 of them.
I had an entire country that was like a matriarchal India-style culture where the females were in charge.
Right.
And the players were visitors, and the players were mostly male characters, male players, and they're like, so how do we adjust to this?
Yeah.
Did they even try to adjust, or did they try to power their way through it?
At first they tried to power their way through it, but I slapped that down pretty quick.
Yeah.
Crushed them under the
Yeah, but making them all different does really matter, and I agree with that. You can't have exactly the same thing.
And it doesn't have to be hard. It's just like Star Trek, okay?
Yeah.
What
shape are the aliens' foreheads in?
Planet, pink aliens, what do their foreheads look like? What is it, the same set redressed as?
Yeah.
That's my favorite page in
Space second edition.
I got that.
Yeah.
Starships
and Spacemen. My
second
favorite
edition.
page in the whole book. But anyone else? Any other questions, thoughts? Or anybody else want to answer the question that we've been kind of spottily answering about what's a must for your cities? What do you got to have?
I'm a little unlike Bill probably. I like my cities to kind of like not have just weird stuff. They just make sense. Like they're realistic places in the realistic world. My worlds are usually mostly more grounded in like realism and not so much high fantasy or just strangeness. Mm-hmm. So, like the one I was saying earlier, the mining and logging town, I spent a lot of time like describing the terrain, describing that there's a mountain nearby, there's a waterfall nearby, describing all the elements of that one small town so that it really felt visually very clear to the players. So.
I think when I run a city, I try to, we've been talking about, the city should have a personality and whatnot. But I think what's really important is the whole, that each citizen in this city has a life that goes on whether the players are there or not. So they're not just standing behind the counter waiting for them to come in to buy a drink. The bartender's got a life, he's got a wife, he's got kids, he's got goals, he's got his own personality. And how the players affect that has long-lasting consequences. I remember this one small town that they repelled an orc invasion. It was a basic low-level kind of thing. But because they did this, the citizenry looked upon them as the city guard, and so they began to come to them with really basic bullshit problems.
He stole my goat.
Yeah, precisely. They found themselves as mediators, for God's sakes. And they were good natured about it because everybody likes to play the hero. But it was, they're suddenly trying to mediate,
That's an entertaining
like-
thing too, because
yeah,
you can
like-
throw it in as a little bit of a filler space in between, other things.
Yeah, they were negotiating land boundaries between two farmers. And the more they did this, suddenly they found themselves in the roles of understood noblery. And when it became obvious that I was setting one of them up to be elected, mayor, that's when they cleared out. Because that was just about enough. But every time, they visited another city, it had, just due to nomads and travelers, it's like, oh yes, I love what you did with Blue Foam, the sea, and they were like, oh Christ, not that place again. So that's, I guess, as far as the city is concerned, it's, you've got to make sure that this place is not just a static location, that these people have lives and what the players are doing are affecting those lives. And I'm done.
I echo a lot of that. Like one of the things Joan Arc over here is having to do now is, she's getting ready to build her temple, right? Because she's going to be 9th level, and so she wants those 300. I know. And I thought you hit 8th. Still 7th. Good. Anyway. Yeah, I know. Oh God. Yeah, I got a text on that. Tell daddy he's screwed. Ray's dead, baby. And, that was because she was playing the mass game at the time. But she's having to save money to do that, and you figure, okay, 360 men-at-arms don't just show up, right? Like, so where you start building this temple, you go, oh, I'll put the cornerstone down here. Well, the local villagers and people, all that stuff. The crappy part about having a cleric is, of course, they do it for free, but she's got to pay the materials, and unlike the fighters who've got to pony up their thing. But how does she get those 360 guys? Well, you got to have a reputation as being like somebody that these followers want to come follow. What you were just describing is a great way to do that.
Yeah, why would they want to follow?
Yeah, and the fact that they can raise dead, which kind of makes me happy.
The biggest thing, if you travel, the biggest difference between cities is the people. Their culture, how they interact with themselves and other people, what they eat, architecture to some degree and things like that, but peppering that in with your game helps a lot too.
Yeah.
If you're in Istanbul and you see 2 men walking down the street holding hands, that means something different than here in the States, and that can shock your players and really set up,
Yeah, exactly. Every city, and I think Adam really hit it when you were talking about the various cities, and that is, every city should not be, the same city. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think that's, it's kind of a trap that some I know that it's a problem that I have, and that is that every city starts to kind of run into the same. Every city's got the exact same kind of feel to it, the exact same, and that's something that you need to break out of whenever you do that.
For 20 years, I made it the generic.
Yeah, because it's easy.
They went to Hamlet every time.
Oh yeah, and for
for
35 years, most people who've been playing for that long flipped through their city state of the Invincible Overlord to find the Boyer Fletcher, and flipped through that to find the blacksmith, and found the Green Frog Tavern, or whatever it might be, which just because that's what you had, that was the resource available.
Well, don't be, I think the big thing about cities too is don't be afraid to turn it on its head, right? A city's dynamic. As much as it's got its political system, it's got everything moving on, it's got its culture, it's got everything. Don't ever be afraid to turn it on its head and have something happen when the PCs get there.
Nothing should be set in stone.
No, nothing.
Because then the players don't feel like they can change anything.
Ever. And I come from a school too of writing and DMing where I like to have pressure on the PCs all the time and the players all the time. So when they come to a city,
that's drama.
Right. When they come to a city, something's going to happen. Good or bad, indifferent. Something's going to happen, and they're going to be involved with it some way or another, or get dragged into it like a fly in the ointment. But I just like doing that, and because you can't be afraid to do that with your city. Make your city work for you as a DM, and that doesn't mean it has to work like the city's supposed to work. Okay, get those players. Don't get them out of that comfort zone. I'm in the city. I'm going to the tavern. I'm kicking back my feet up on the table. Okay, well, you're doing that. Well, a fire starts and the whole block's burning down now, what are you gonna do? You know, this cult just moved in and is taking over. What are you gonna do? So.
Snakes everywhere.
Yeah, you know,
you see this be another snake cult.
Yeah, there ain't nothing wrong with that. So, you know, a city is meant to give you as a DM a little bit, I think, license to exercise a little bit more of that free will, a little bit more of that your own expression of what you want to have happen. I think that's how I look at a city overall.
A historically accurate medieval city is a dirty, smelly, boring place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
That nobody lived past 30.
Right.
So why not have a demon move in?
You're right.
So.
Question?
More of a comment. So I've been with DCC a lot lately. One of the things you mentioned, like the cults sort of stuff, is when we're in a town, that's a lot of what's going on. Is it's either battles between cults or religions or something. You're able to political. Here's the mayor and about what is the cults that in the city that are really pushing what we're supposed to be trying to do or what we're trying to prevent. Or, hey, these two cults have been battling each other for ages, and we just kind of waited in, the storm of what they're doing right now. Just in the city itself, we're going there for equipment and, lodging. It's like, oh, there's all this other crap going on around us. But, the cults, I thought, has been a nice way to introduce chaos, controlled chaos.
You need to come see our blood cult box. You'll love it.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
You'll love it. That's exactly what that's about. I mean, it starts off based, you can run it as a campaign, and that's the whole idea. PCs get invited into the city, they got to clear out this old mansion that it's a blight on the place, and if you clear it out, you can take it over. Oh, that's all great. So they go clear it out, take it over. The very first night they're in there moving into their new mansion, the Archmage's tower blows up, his cult is moving in, and they're destroying anything and everything that's got to do with magic, including magic users. Number one target. And now the PCs think they're all safe in the city. Well, guess where they got to get the hell out of now? So, cults are a great way to mess with a city. Great way to do it.
Well, in DCC's, particularly for wizards and elves, DCC has that the patron system, which is fantastic for that stuff because every patron has its own agenda. Especially when some of us have been playing DCC for a while. We've been messing around. I'm sure all of us who have been messing around with patron rules here and there. Like I allowed players to have multiple patrons. That's a great way for them to pit themselves against themselves. It's
patron artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, right. The nice thing is that the players can find themselves on so many different sides of the same problem, which is...
what I like is when you have several wizards and several clerics.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of fighters or anything else in the group, but it's like that's what it's made of. And it's like they have all these other focuses that they need to do in one game, and,
But Bugaboo Bills demands one thing, and your god demands something
The best
else.
adventure hook ever is when you've got competing cults or wizards or clerics, and the players cannot figure out whose side they're supposed to be on.
What's the module? One of the best city modules of all time, Veiled Society.
Veiled
does
Society,
this.
oh, yeah.
And they start off, you have your wizardly types in one group, and then your thiefy types in another group, and one faction approaches one group and another faction approaches the other, and that's how the whole adventure starts.
And the PCs are running around with no armor and daggers, right?
Right, because they're in a city.
Got a law, right? No armor, no weapons.
I think there was armor,
something crazy, right?
Yeah, it was like no armor heavier than
it's
leather.
It's not like they're walking through a dungeon loaded for bear, right?
Right.
And
It's a great hook, Like you're splitting the party. First off, again, always a great idea if you're a DM. Second, they're underpowered, and third, you're pitting them against each other. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, that is a great module. That is a great. David Cook was awesome.
That was good.
Yeah.
All right, what else we got? Because I'm gonna at least need to split pretty soon because I'm gonna go get set for my game and stuff.
Yeah. Momentarily here. Any more questions?
And feed my daughter. I probably better do that.
Otherwise she gets really angry.
I know. She's scared.
You brought the
wouldn't like
child
me when I'm
pellets.
angry.
Yeah.
Well, see, I don't know if everyone knows that, but Frog God Games is all the books that you guys have ever gotten are packed by a horde of slave children.
Probably by me, but there's about like a 50% chance they're packed by one of the clan.
Yeah. We have 8 kids that work for us in fulfillment. Between 10 and 15.
I can edit that part out of the podcast. I don't want to go on record with it.
Hey, man, those kids are set up and they get good jobs. They're not working fast food.
15 and under too. So.
Yeah.
Well, Charles, there are people visiting you now.
Yeah, four of them are my godchildren, 2 of them are my kids, so we're
Most of
good.
us are happy to be working anyway.
Oh, they're psyched, yeah, they're hardworking farm kids.
$10, so.
Well, I think, unless we have any other questions, I think then because of time and because we were getting close to that 8 o'clock time slot, and I still have to flip through Visible Cities to find the page that I'm running tonight.
Yeah,
this is your con prep time.
Yeah, but seriously,
exactly. No, that's how I do it.
A serious plug for that D30 companion. Anyone who doesn't have it, go take a look at it. It's really, really good.
And those ready refs, those are actually
Yeah,
that stuff's gold. Ready ref sheets.
Yep.
Ready ref sheets. Yeah, get them. Mike's got a few cases of them. He puts them up on eBay.
Back in the day, so.
Yeah, they're really good. I mean, both those are just really invaluable resources. And of course, plugs for my Kickstarter.
Yeah,
But
and if any of you guys already have Frog Got Games books and you want them signed, Bill will be at my booth on Sunday signing books.
yeah, I'll be in there. Two of my distributors are here right next to each other. So.
That's the one.
That's it. That's it right there. Yeah, that's a whoop ass book, man.
Okay.
That's one of the few actual books I didn't bring it here, but I very frequently travel with that one.
Do you guys have that?
That's not mine. That's somebody else makes that.
That one is on the back side of the of Roy's booth.
Yeah, it's on Roy's booth. It's worth every penny, and it's really good. It's really good.
All of his products are good, actually, pretty much.
I've got all of them. Yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't go on record with that. That and Tome of Adventure Design
Tome of
go
Adventure
with
Design.
me.
It sounds like he's got the last of them.
He's
I'm
probably got
out.
about 10
Mine are
or
gone.
15 copies, I think. Is about
Yeah,
it.
so John's got the last 10 or 15 copies of those. We may reprint them, but it will the first edition, original one. This is it. You got the last. You got the last.
So if anybody's
Paizo's
interested,
out.
come
We're
by
out.
and give me your name and email or whatever, and we can hook you up.
See, reprinting that sounds like a badass stretch goal.
Well, yeah, it might be actually. That actually might be a stretch goal we put on something, a small Kickstarter later, well, like one of the Questadium ones or something, where because 5e players are never going to get it. It's gone.
It'd be, yeah.
I mean, it's just gone, right?
But amongst all the books that I hear people talk about, that's one of the ones that I get the most, positive.
Well, that's the tricky part about doing is the reprint, because we sold 2,500 of them. We'll figure 2,400 of them with 100 damaged given away, sitting on my bookshelf that I've used because I didn't have my other one, so I just grabbed a new one, whatever.
It's damn good.
There's 2,400 of them there, and we're down to whatever you've got in stock, because Paizo's out of stock, we're out of stock. Noble Knight, I think, is out of stock because he keeps asking me for restocks. Nobody's got them. So you got the last.
John, you're the man. You got it.
Yeah.
You guys, anybody else want to pimp something real quick before we wrap up?
Come visit us at the
Yeah. Take care of your vendors.
Don't
man.
be afraid to come-
Everybody up here has something for sale down there, right?
Absolutely nothing to do with it.
I don't, except for me, but two of my distributors
You have stuff for sale. Yeah, that's fine.
By extension, I do.
I'm simple.
I don't have to do a booth at this.
I'm bad at this,
Makes me
but
glad
I should do this.
Oh, you have? Yeah,
It's nothing to do with Urban Invention, but Goodman Games released a Dungeon Crawl Classics adventure specifically for Yukon called Synthetic Swordsman of the Purple Planet, which I
By
happen-
some guy named Jim Wampler.
I happen to
I don't know
write.
who he is.
and some of these guys already have played in it this morning, so.
Very cool.
Please come buy a copy and keep me employed.
There we go.
Right, well, thanks everybody for being here.
Yep, you bet.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you guys for coming. Have fun getting your evening game slots.
Game on, right?
Yeah.
Game on.
Game on.
Game on. Game on.
Let's go eat.
This has been a Save or Die special report.